thanks so much for joining me for this week's episode of When I Grew Up. On today's episode, I have a new friend with me. Her name is Ina Jee. Hi, Ina. How are you?
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. It's so great to meet you. We've got connected through a mutual friend, and I just feel honored that you'd be here with me tonight. So thank you.
No worries. Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Okay, so Ina, let's just get right to it. Could you tell me what it is that you do?
Okay. So sometimes that feels like a loaded question. But I'm basically a program management official at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So, a lot of times people are like, what does that mean? And for me, it's basically just overseeing kind of the programmatic administrative functions, whether it's like personnel, budget, kind of looking at all aspects of our operations. So it's a lot of little things at once, just looking at across like our resources, basically.
Okay, so I feel like you gave a really good summary. However, I'm going to ask for a little more detail, just so that I can understand your job a little bit better. So you work for the CDC, and basically you kind of take all the administrative stuff in. Like I remember you mentioned before too, you kind of help people allocate resources as well. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, could you give me like an example of what it is?
Sure. So resources can mean like people or money. So for example, we have staff and some of our staff are fellows. So every year we onboard fellows. One of the fellows is the Epidemic Intelligence Service officers. So they're like kind of the fellows that you'll see on the front lines of an outbreak. They're the first ones there to kind of gather information or to collect data, kind of get, ahead of everybody to see what they can do to kind of help. So that's one of our fellowships that we have in our program. So what that means is we kind of look every year at how much money we have and how much money equals how many additional fellows we can have every year. So in our division, we have the Office of the Director where I'm housed in, and then we have 3 branches. So it's kind of like OD and then 3 branches. So one of the branches has fellowships, and then another branch does like training. And then of course the other branch also has fellowships. So it's kind of just looking across the division, always at a higher, a higher level of, for this year, this is how much money we have to work with. How many additional fellows can we hire, if that makes sense?
No, it does make sense. So, I mean, are you dealing with a lot of numbers then all day long?
Yeah, and it's ironic because I was actually a journalism major in college, and I'm bad at math. And so I break that stereotype of Asians being good at math. And I'm like, I don't even know how I got in this field of like math and science related stuff when I was like more into like writing and, kind of just being a reporter. That's what I wanted to do. So it's kind of ironic that I'm in this field, but yeah, so it's...
Oh, that is so interesting. Oh my goodness. Well, we're going to have to hear that backstory in a minute. But before we get to that, so I know you kind of gave us more detail of the example of allocating resources, but does your day-to-day look different every day, or can you kind of take us through a typical day for you maybe?
Sure. I mean, for me, it's basically what are the fires of the day? And those fires can look like, it can be anything from like, we have, such and such amount of money that we have to work with, but we need to not only hire fellows, but we need, more training for the division, or we have other like requests that we receive. And so it's kind of like, it's really about prioritization of issues or things that come up. As far as like problem solving, it could be something as simple as, I need more space for my staff on the floor. And then I have to look at the floor plan and kind of talk with them about like, so-and-so can sit here. Or it could be like, listen, we have a contract that we we need to get out the door? Do we have enough money? So it's like all these like little requests that you just prioritize of like what is the most urgent or what needs to be resolved today, as far as, you know, it could be like I need a place to sit or I need more money kind of thing.
Oh, so interesting. So like everyone knows that they're supposed to come to you for those kind of problems.
It's like I will be the starting point, and then thankfully I have a team. So like I have a really awesome administrative officer, and she really does a lot of the fires, like putting out of the fires. So she's more like the subject matter expert and stuff that, you know, I'm just like, go to Loretta. But she also has a team of like 6 people under her who kind of help with that. So it's like I have to decide if it is something that can be resolved within my capacity or my team's capacity.
I see.
Or, you know, like refer them to somebody else.
So interesting, man. I feel like there must be so many different, how do I say this? Like, I mean, when I think of the CDC, right, I just think of like COVID.
Hazmat suit.
Yeah, hazmat. Yeah, exactly. Like the CDC is here when I watch TV and stuff. Like, there are so many different aspects that I didn't even realize need to happen. But even what you said, like, you know, allocating fellows to certain like places when an outbreak or a virus happens, like I didn't even realize obviously someone would need to send them there, but it's really cool that you can look at the bigger picture and be able to understand where those resources need to go and how much of it you can give. That's really cool. Well, I feel like the obvious question that we kind of talked about before we started recording is COVID. Yeah, I mean, like, first of all, thank you for being part of this humongous team that has been able to keep us safe to the best of your ability and the capacity that you are able to. And I'm so grateful. Even if you're like not directly, I feel like you're directly if you're working for CDC. So thank you for that. But yeah, how has it impacted your job specifically?
So, you know, for us, because we have a lot of fellows and a lot of them are involved in their states or territories, wherever they're located, because they're located throughout the country, they are, you know, on the first line of the response. So for us, we've gotten a lot more money this year to help with getting more fellows in our division to help, but also to kind of ramp up whatever systems or training that we need for our staff as well. So it's kind of like when it rains, it pours. And, you know, in the past few years, we've kind of had like a level budget, you know, maybe it was like $40 million. And depending on like how big your program is at CDC, like that is a lot of money or that's like a drop in the bucket. So some places have like hundreds of millions of dollars every year. So for us, it was like we got about $25 million more this year. And we're kind of like, all right, it's great, right? We've always had like wish lists of things that we wanted to do for our program, but really this year it's that plus COVID. So, you know, how many more fellows can we hire or, you know, place in these states, or how many more systems or trainings that we need that we can implement in a short amount of time. So for us, because our fiscal year is from October to September, as soon as we get the money, it's kind of like we got to obligate as fast as we can. And then that money like goes back to the treasury, and then we have to wait until the next fiscal year to get more money. So it's been interesting. Like it's been a good problem, I guess, to have, but it's also been kind of stressful of like, all right, we got to get things out the door. We got to get contracts out the door. So I think for me, it was like exciting, you know?
Oh, interesting. Interesting. That's so fascinating. Okay, so did you know about COVID before it hit the US then?
I think like most people, I saw it on the news and
Okay.
I was like, okay, what is this thing? I did not see any of those movies. Like, you know, like I didn't see Outbreak. I didn't see the one that they actually filmed at CDC before, you know, everybody's like, did you see that? And I'm like, no, I didn't see it. Maybe it's a good thing I didn't. But I saw that something was happening, you know, in another part of the world. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And before my current position, I worked in global HIV AIDS. So it was like, I went from traveling to a lot of countries for work, visiting partner sites or ministries of health, to kind of a more domestic program. And
Oh,
I thought that
wow.
was going to be like easy breezy, like it wasn't going to be like fires every day. The fires look different.
Mm.
But with us, because we have these fellows, it's a different kind of crazy, I feel like. So for me, when I saw that, I was like, okay, that could get a little crazy, but
Mm.
exactly how crazy, I didn't really expect it to be on that scale.
Oh, wow.
So like for everybody at CDC, like it's been kind of all hands on deck, whether you're deployed directly or you're helping to cover for somebody who has been deployed.
I see.
And
Okay.
so, yeah, it's been interesting. And I did kind of like a 1 month stint at the communications office just to do something a little different to help with the COVID outbreak. And it was interesting just hearing briefings or things that were going on like minute by minute.
Oh my goodness.
So I mean, it's a lot, I guess.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's incredible to like, I feel like just be on the front lines in a way that I haven't thought of before. Because, obviously in the news, nurses and medical staff, which I'm so grateful for, has been kind of the heroes of this time because of just the situation.
Mm.
But listening to what you're saying too, it's like without what you guys are doing, the unsung heroes, I guess, of this time of our life. But like you just said that you were doing all this like HIV and AIDS stuff before doing this. Well, now I'm gonna ask you, like, how did you end up at the CDC and at this job doing what you're doing now? Because and then you even said you were a journalism major. I'm so like curious what's going on.
Okay, let's rewind a little bit.
Yes.
I mean, when I was in grade school, I think my parents like really tried to encourage me to do things that they saw that I took an interest in. And,
Mm,
like math and science, like I said, not really interested. I did some like creative writing stuff and they were like, oh, maybe she wants to be a writer. So in high school, my parents encouraged me to kind of do the newspaper club. And I was like, I don't even know what that means, whatever. But I did it for a couple of years and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed
wow.
writing stories, like kind of like what you do, but on paper, like interviewing people, talking to people, getting to know what they're about. And so
Yeah.
when I went to UGA, I was like, all right, I think I'm going to try that journalism route. It seems like something that I can see myself doing long
Mm.
term ish.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, like, when I got to my major classes, and I just really took an interest in it, and I was like, man, this is something that I really do enjoy, like, doing. So it was kind of a shock to me. Like after I graduated UGA, I was like, I didn't have a job lined up, so I was like, what
Mm.
do I do? And I'm from Gwinnett County, so I just happened to just do a lot of searches of like internships or what can I do right now. So I got a gig at the Gwinnett Daily Post um,
Really?
for free. So it was like a free internship, and I was like, I'll just take it for the experience and go from there. And I think they felt sorry for me because they started paying me like $6 an hour, and I was like, thank you. So I got a semi-paid internship, and I loved it because, like, more specifically, my major was magazine, like print magazine. So
Yeah.
like writing features, like that was kind of like what I really liked. So I kind of wrote for the feature section of that newspaper and got to really highlight a lot of stuff that was happening in the county at the time. And that was like, now I'm dating myself. That was like 2003-ish.
Okay.
2003, 2004. So Gwinnett County was starting to get more cultured, I'll
Right,
say, right?
right.
Like Pleasant Hill, what you see now was not Pleasant Hill back then.
Yes, agreed.
And it was just like, even like I was the only like staff writer that was not white for that
Mm.
paper of our county. It was kind of shocking, but they were like, what is happening to Pleasant Hill? They're just like, there's so many Asian businesses happening. So I mean, I loved it. Like like highlighting restaurants or, introducing people to what boba tea is at that
Oh,
time. Like a
wow.
lot of stuff that I was like, dude, you don't know this? So way before K barbecue or BBQ, but it was cool, except, they offered me a full-time job. And it was like, I looked at the offer letter and I was like, wait, is there a zero missing in this amount? Like, it's like $25,000 a year. Like, I don't know if I can even survive at that living at home. So, long story short, I decided, like, I just made a decision to kind of move outside of Georgia. I've, lived in Georgia all my life since then. And I was like, let's just do it now or never. So I went to DC. And
Mm.
so DC was like close enough from home, but far enough to where I could like kind of, live on my own and all that good stuff. And of course, DC, it's just like government jobs are everywhere. And that was kind of like the norm. A lot of friends that I met or knew were in government. And I'm like, what is that
Mm.
about? Like in Georgia, it's like you never think like when I grow up, I'm going to be a federal government worker.
Sure.
That just doesn't really cross your mind. So I worked at the DC mayor's office for a little bit
Oh,
temporarily.
wow.
I knew that was like a temporary gig because they needed somebody for like a couple months. And so I was like, wow, this is cool. At the time they had a Office of Asian and Pacific Islander Affairs. So I worked in there, kind of got a little taste of what it's like to be in a metropolitan area with, just a lot of people from different backgrounds and meeting them. And I was like, this is cool. But I knew that was temporary. So I just literally got online and I did like job searches. And I ended up on the federal government site, like usajobs.gov. That's like the
Okay.
main portal for how people can apply for a government job. And I originally thought I was applying for a grant writer because I was like, okay, I'm going to still kind of stick to my journalism roots. It was not that. But like I became like a grants clerk and then a grants management official. And then I was there for like 5 years in DC. And all of a sudden I just got homesick. So I was like, okay, I got to move back home. But what do I do? Like, I need to find a job. So at that time in DC, I was working at the National Institutes of Health. So that's also big in the news, Dr. Fauci, like
Yes, yes.
all that. And so NIH and CDC, they're like sister agencies under Health and Human Services. So I really feel like this was a God thing, but I found a job at CDC in Atlanta that was the same exact kind of job that I was doing at NIH. So I just applied and, they were like, when can you move back? And I was like, next month, maybe. So I came to CDC as a grants management specialist in global HIV/AIDS. So that's kind of how I started
Oh,
that track.
wow.
Yeah. So
That's insane.
it doesn't make any sense of like how I
No, it
got.
doesn't, It doesn't make
And
any sense.
I'm telling you, it was just like a series of happenings that
Wow.
just led me to where I am now. So
That's crazy. Okay, well, I'm gonna
yeah.
have to ask you a few questions about your story. And I hope that I remember a lot of it. But then starting from even just the very beginning,
Mhm.
I found it really interesting that your parents kind of fostered and wanted you to do something that you enjoyed. And the reason I find that interesting or worth talking about is because I do feel like a common pattern in Asian American families, even I would even go, I mean, I only can speak honestly to my Korean American background. But yeah, like I feel like a lot of parents, push their kids to be one career minded or
Mhm.
especially and I would go as far as to say is that a lot of parents that I know and families that I know, they don't really foster the creative sides of their
Mhm.
kids because they want them to be doctors and
Right.
lawyers and successful and to make money, which is
Mhm.
all as a new mom myself, I don't, like I understand it. I understand it, wanting to succeed in the eyes of the world as well. Um, However, I was curious to, yeah, like what was that relationship like with your parents? And do you know why, looking back on it, that they really did want you to find something that you loved?
Man, that's a good question. I mean, I feel like my parents were not the typical Asian immigrant parents, I guess you'll say. So my dad, like I said, he was a pastor, but before that, he was just like a regular businessman in
Mm.
Atlanta. And so they immigrated here in the 70s. And so they've been here forever. But I don't know, like if it was just maybe immersing their themselves in the culture here, or trying to
Mm.
assimilate and trying to see different views or whatever. But like, I just remember ever since I was growing up, it would be like, what do you want to be? What do you like? And then going from there. So I remember I mean, I did take piano lessons,
Mm.
like they did try to foster that side of me, but I was like, no, I'm not practicing piano.
Yeah.
It's not for me. They tried to enroll me in art classes, and I was like, I can't draw, So
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
when they finally saw like I would write stories, and I remember like in third grade or something, there was some writing contest, and I had won or something like that. And so they were like really excited, and they're like, maybe this is the path. I don't know. But I feel like they just saw, they wanted me to be happy. And I think
Mm.
they saw that I was happy when I was writing,
Mm.
and they just wanted to see where that led, I guess. But even for me, it was like I kind of forgot about that a little bit. So when I got
Mm.
to high school and they're like, why don't you do newspaper? I'm like, okay. Like I
Oh,
kind of forgot
interesting.
about, my writing passion or whatever
Oh,
it was back
wow.
then.
Wow.
So it kind of rekindled there. And I was like, yeah, this is kind of what I like. I like
Yeah.
this. So I don't know if it was just, like my mom, she worked at First Union Bank in North Carolina when my dad was in seminary. And so she was kind of making the money. And I guess they were just exposed to a different, like
Mm.
living in the South as
Mhm.
an immigrant, and just experiencing a lot of things. Maybe, I don't know, like I should ask them, like, why did you make me do writing?
No, I
But
mean, just listening to you talk, I do think your parents probably had a different mindset than those that are maybe immigrated here later in life as well.
Mhm.
I can kind of relate. My parents immigrated here actually when they were much younger, like in middle school and high school. And so, like I grew up very American, in a very American culture household. And so I can relate to what you're saying. I think, uh, from what you're telling me, it just sounds like that your parents really, really cared and loved you. Not to say that others don't, but I think they were able to have an open mind
Mhm.
and I mean, and just be able to push you to do things. I think it's cool that they reminded you to go, like, hey, why don't you check out newspaper?
I know. I mean,
Well,
yes, they're wise. They're
yeah, that's
wiser than
so
I give them credit for.
wonderful.
I mean, so this is a side story, but like I even in middle school one day, I was just tired of people mispronouncing my name.
Uh-huh.
So I just showed up in middle school and I was like, my name's Catherine. And like the teachers didn't ask for any paperwork. They were just like, all right, Catherine. So I stuck with Catherine from middle school all the way through high school. So my high school diploma says Catherine Ina Jee. That has It's like there's no basis on that at all. But my parents were like, if you want to be called Catherine, go right ahead. And so I think they were just like, let's see what this girl wants to do and let her do it. But
Man, what a blessing. That's great. I'm like taking, tips right now. Yeah, like let my my kid wants to be called something else. Why
I
not?
mean, not too crazy, but
No, no, but still, I think that's really cool that they were able to give you the freedom that you needed to
yeah,
pursue something that they knew you would be not only love but like be happy with. And but
yeah.
the crazy thing is that's not what you ended up doing. But
I know. I chased money. No, I'm kidding.
no,
But
no.
I think like also the other part of me growing up was like, I want a stable career. So that was the
Mm.
other side of me that was kind of fighting with my passion, I guess. And so, growing up as a PK, a pastor's kid, like you kind of experience like, I don't know how much money we're going to have next week
Sure,
or next month.
yeah.
And I think in my mind, it was like, I want to know exactly how much I'm going to make, when I'm going to get paid, and the
Mm.
stability of that. So I think for me, like, I really enjoyed journalism. I really enjoyed like writing stories and meeting people. And like I told you, like that unpaid internship turned into $6, turned into $25,000 a year. And I was like, okay, let me just see what else is out there.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, I would have never said growing up like I want to be a federal government worker, but kind of the path that led me to where I am now, it was you know, it was just like, okay, I enjoy what I do now. You know, don't get me
Mm.
wrong that I'm like miserable or something, but
Mhm, mhm,
it is different from what I thought I would do and wanted
mhm.
to do in the beginning.
Sure.
But I'm still like fortunate to like I meet a lot of people. I don't write stories about them, but you know, I try to help them in the capacity that we have as far as whether it's funding or the resources that we have in our division.
Mm.
But it is different, and like I have thought about doing journalism or writing some articles as a side gig, but I'm like, oh man, I don't have time for that right now. So
Right, right.
I push it off, but I mean, who knows? We'll see.
No, absolutely. It's like the life still grows every single day, I feel like. But um what I was going to say, so you mentioned that yeah, like even though you weren't satisfied with that paycheck at the Gwinnett Post
Mhm,
and you decided to explore other things, I
mhm,
feel like that's a dilemma or kind of like a heart struggle with a lot of young people today, right? It's like pursuing what they love
mhm.
and then like making the decision to not pursue that but to find a stable job. However, you said you found something that you enjoy, you know? And what would you like, I guess any do you have any advice for that, you know? Like it's like, you know, there's one part it's like, "Oh, like you love it, but it's not paying you enough." Like would you say like go find something else or is it kind of like a personal thing? Do you get what I'm asking you? Sorry, it's
Gosh.
like my thoughts are a little bit scattered.
I like for me it was I thought about that a lot. Like when they
Mm.
made that offer to me, you know, do you want to be on staff? And that was kind of what I thought my end goal was at the time. And I think for me, because I want to say I'm like risk adverse, right? So I'm like doing the math, like, can I live off of $25,000 a year? I think not. So I think for me at the time when I made the decision to leave, I was like, I'll put that on hold, you know, like,
Mm.
let's see what happens. So when I first moved to DC, it
You're
took,
so brave. I
I
just
don't know, brave, but you know, I was in my 20s. So
yeah,
take
yeah, okay,
whatever
okay.
adjective you want to use for 20s. But I was like, listen, you know, I'll put that on hold and see what happens. And like when I got to DC, it took me like a couple months to find my first job there. And so in the meantime, I did kind of do a little freelancing for one of the newspapers there, and I enjoyed that, right? Because I met a lot of people and they had interesting careers or you know
Yeah, yeah.
backgrounds, and so it was really cool to just kind of do that a little bit, and
Mm.
I guess that was my transition into all right, now I'm gonna have a salary job that it's
Yeah.
not really what I used to do, but um, it's for me, I feel like I find other ways to maybe get that journalism, that writing piece out. So whether it's journaling and it's just for me,
Yes.
or it's writing something on social media, which I really don't do, but when I do, you know, that's kind of my outlet, I guess, for
Yeah.
now. But like even at work, like when I did the deployment for the communications team, like I did a little bit of writing. So I was kind of like figuring out again, like, okay, what would be my next step? Because I feel like I'm always thinking about that. Like, where do I want to go from here?
Mhm.
You know, so I've been in this position for about 5 years now. And
Mhm.
it's kind of like, I like what I do. I love the people that I work with, but I'm always open to other
Yeah.
opportunities.
Absolutely.
And, you know, you just never know. So I think this is just me, even though I'm risk adverse, like don't be afraid to venture out, you know, like you
Mm.
never know how the paths may cross again or like how
Mhm.
those tie into one another later.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
yeah, like it's crazy like when I think about my path, like never would I've imagined that I would be where I am now. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like that is kind of the theme of my entire podcast normally. It's like people don't really realize they have a plan, and then the plan doesn't go according to plan, and then they and they love what they do currently, you know. And so on that note, can you tell me what it is that you love most about your job?
Gosh, I would say that I work with a great group of people, and I really love CDC's mission. I love public health. I never thought I
Mm.
would, but I really believe in it, and it just makes me really happy to know, like, even though I'm not on the front lines, I'm not like out in the field, or I'm not doing sample stuff, or I'm not an epidemiologist, but I help in a way that helps them get to where they need to go, or gives them money that they need for resources to help with whatever outbreak or disease, or training. So I do feel fulfilled in like knowing that I am part of that.
Mm-hmm.
So CDC is an agency that I really believe in.
Mm.
So I really like that.
That's awesome. No, I mean, I could get behind that. um, just out of curiosity, Ina, so the people that are on, like, that you're deploying, or you're kind of allocating the resources for, are these doctors, or like you
Mhm.
mentioned the word training too? Like, can I ask you what that looks like? What is training?
Yeah, so we have staff in our division, and
Okay.
they're like, they can be MDs, or they can be vets, or whatever, but not everybody, they can be like a scientist, right?
Mm.
But the fellowships, some of them are, I think most of them are postdoctoral
Oh,
fellowships. So
okay.
it's like they have done the schooling, and now it's like the hands on stuff.
Wow.
And so even though they're done with schooling, there's a lot of training as far as like, we've started to implement like training that you don't get in schools, whether it's something about like speaking to the press,
Mm.
or something about, like implicit bias. Like we're starting to incorporate more about things with current events that we see that are issues happening,
Oh,
right? So
wow. Okay.
like they can't learn some things from textbooks, but we have like some trainings where they have a classroom setting, or some kind of week-long course that they're in, and they learn about different parts of like a presentation, how to give a presentation, just kind of skill sets, I guess, to add to that.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, like sometimes I want to sit in on the training and be like, I want to learn this. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So these, like, kind of, I guess, further education type of programs are, do you and your team come up with these programs, or are they something that the CDC has readily available?
So the CDC has their own training stuff, but we also like kind of look at outside vendors if there's something that we
Oh,
really need, and that we don't have available in house. So it's kind
okay,
of a mixture
okay,
of both.
okay, cool. Man, that's really neat. Um, okay, then what do you like least about your job?
Gosh, if you asked me a year ago, so I mentioned like I am a supervisor,
Uh-huh.
and it was really hard for me in the beginning. It was kind of like trial by fire.
Mm.
So I originally got into this position when somebody asked me, like, would you be interested in being this program management official for a detailed, so kind of like a temporary basis, a trial period.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I'm up for the challenge. And when I did that, at the time, I wasn't supervising anybody.
Mm.
And then when I applied for the official position, I was like, all right, so here you go. And also, by the way, you're going to manage 8 people. Like for me, I was like, what does that even look like? I don't even know. Like, I'm an only child. I don't have children. Like, I am more like, like extroverted introvert. So what is all this like people touchy feely stuff? But like, it was hard in the beginning because I didn't know how to be a good manager. I didn't know how to be a
Mm.
supervisor. And I had wished that I was better equipped, better prepared for that. And,
Mhm, mhm,
half of the stuff was like learning on the job, but the other
mm.
half, you could get a little sense of, okay, this is kind of the 101s of being a manager. There's nothing that they give you, when you're a new supervisor. You just have to take all these courses throughout the year. So for me, that would have been the hardest part like a year ago. But I was able to kind of like build that relationship with the group and, earn trust, but also have trust for them. And so it was a learning process. But I think like it's kind of like a sweet spot right now. So we work really well as a team. But it's, for me, like meeting a lot of people is great. But you also learn personalities, and especially just in a virtual setting right now. Like CDC has been working remotely since last March, right? Like
Right, right.
and it's kind of like we've had new people on board. Like there's people you've never met in person, and
That's crazy.
it's kind of the challenging part of having to have meetings with people that you're not really familiar with, but you have to, just get through it and be like, all right, so here's business. This is what we need to talk about, and kind of figure out like you're not only like working, but you're also kind of figuring out each other, right? So that that people skill. So I think for me, because I'm more like, I like to be behind the scenes, it's like the challenging part for me would be like, there's a lot more Zoom, there's a lot more video stuff, and you have to do presentations or you have to speak at meetings. And I'm just like, oh, I don't like that. I'm not camera ready.
Yeah.
So like,
seriously,
yeah.
I'm sure this been, I mean, for introverts around the world, this is like the worst thing ever to have like
It
virtual
is.
meetings every single day. But
Yeah.
man, that's intense. I feel like man, I didn't realize that you were supervising a whole entire team as you were talking, but I mean, I'm sure that's really challenging, especially having people that literally come to you for like, okay, what do I do next?
Yeah. Like for me, I had a vacancy in a position that was Loretta, the administrative officer.
Okay.
So when she was not in the picture, it was just me.
Ah,
And
okay.
like it's like I'm not a subject matter expert on all these things, right?
Mm,
I know the high level. I kind of know like a little bit of everything, just enough to be dangerous. But if they're like, I need help with this system, or I don't know how to process this thing, I'm like, I don't either. So I had to build that trust with them, but not knowing exactly like all the ins and outs of their
sure,
day-to-day
yeah.
lives. And they're all older than me. So I'm sure they're just like, who are you to be telling me what to do? A little bit of that. Not everybody was like that, but it's a little bit of just having
Right.
them to have confidence, like I can, be a good manager for them, and that they can
Yeah.
come to me with anything. But it's not just work related stuff. It's kind of like you bring a little bit of your personal life to work. And so
Sure.
it's dealing with that too, like conflict or, like
Mm,
other stuff, non-work related issues that come up. And I'm just like, I don't know.
that's
So
so
yeah.
interesting.
Um,
Wow. Um, can I ask you, so you don't have to have any like medical knowledge or any about medicine to do what you do?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
So that's kind of the thing about, like you mentioned, when you think of CDC, you think of like hazmat suit, you think of a
Yeah.
lab, you think of the science, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I thought of too first. But then there's like the other half, which is like management operations.
Mm.
So honestly, like I think I've asked all of my coworkers, like, what was your major in college? Like, I got anything from like history to, like computer science, but they're not doing computer science, just like um poli sci, art, a lot of these backgrounds that for us, it's kind of like if somebody sees potential in you, or if you, build your skill set and you like say, okay, I can do it, and you show that you can do it. I think it's like half of it is on the job training, like at least for what I do, like I
Yeah.
literally had to learn more about pivot tables with Excel, because I was like, I don't even know budget. I don't even know what's going on with this, but I wanted to kind of challenge myself and, like kind of stretch myself of, all right, like learn a new skill set. And they had confidence in me that I would be able to do it. So I was grateful for that. But it's like, that's the other thing about CDC. There's just so many resources available as
Mm.
far as like personal development and professional development, right? So it's like, if you want to learn something, chances are you can pretty much, get the resource or the training that you need.
Oh wow, that's really good to know. I'm curious about one last thing before we wrap up our time together. I don't want to keep you for too long. So, um, if somebody were thinking about like a management position similar to yours, kind of doing what you're doing, what do you feel like are some like good like personality traits or characteristics to have, like strengths?
Mm. Man, um, well, like you don't have to love math because there's always like Excel and stuff, but
Yeah.
like organization, I would say, if you're able to prioritize, if you're able to kind of work under pressure, like
Mm.
there's things, like I said, those fires that come up every day look different. And it could be something as small as, I need equipment, or this travel needs to be approved today, or we have, $500,000 that we need to find so that we can pay for something. So it's kind of like being able to like have all of those competing priorities in an order where you're able to just organize them into your head or your thoughts and know the resources. Like you may not know the answer to everything and you probably won't, but if you know the resources to say, hey, so for this issue, this person is your go-to, or the point of contact is this, or I know where you can find this. It's just like, I guess, being resourceful with what you have as well.
Mm.
It You don't need a degree in this, like
Yeah, yeah. I was
it's
gonna say if
just
someone
kind
one were
of
to study this, what would they study? But I guess you saying that makes it sound extremely accessible. And I feel like this job, obviously, with the amount of interviews I've done, I feel like every job I've never really thought deeply about, right? But until I interview them. But yeah, I feel like this job in particular, I don't even realize so many behind the scenes things have to happen for
Mhm,
whether it's the CDC or any company to move forward and make progress and help people.
mhm.
So it's been really cool to hear about what you do. Before we end our time together, do you have any advice for people listening? It could be about your job, but or just any life advice in general.
Man.
I feel like you gave us a lot of good tidbits here and there. My favorite one, I think, was, just about trying new things and being open. But in addition to that, do you have anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, I guess I would say one last thing is, as a journalist, I met a lot of people, and you just
Mm,
don't know all the experience that a person has, right? Their background, where they're from. And so to really tap into people around you and just talk
mm,
to them, get to know them, like you never know if that person will like give you like this great piece of advice that you'll use later in life, or if they'll just give you insight to maybe something that you are kind of struggling with, like what is my next step in my career,
mm,
like I've met so many interesting people that I never would have thought like, to have a conversation with, but like I have learned that you just never know,
mm,
what kind of story a person has and how it's helped me. But it's not just like a give or a take kind of thing, but you also share your story and you help others, like kind of like what you're doing with
mm,
this podcast, right? Like it's so, I think I wish I had talked to more people like when I was
mm.
younger, and not just to my friends or my known people, I guess, in my people group, but just like talking to my coworkers that I used to work with, or just getting to know more about like, somebody that I see that I want to be, right? Like, hey, can I pick your brain, or can I just ask you a couple questions, or do you mind if I just, take like an hour of your day to ask you some career related questions or things like that. So I've learned to do that. And I, you know, want to pay that forward too. So I'm, maybe like an informal mentor mentee kind of thing, having that mindset of, yeah, let me learn from others.
Yeah. Would you be open to that if someone's listening today and they're like, man, I'd love to talk to Ina more about life and her job. Would it be okay if I connected you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm sure it's like, now what does that mean? So, cause I'm like, I will tell my mom every day what I do. Like every day she'll say like, oh yeah, you do grants, right? I'm like, no, I don't do that. It's a lot. And so, it's exciting to talk with people who have like interest in things, or they want to know more about stuff of, like stuff that or maybe I just didn't tap into when I was younger, right? Like I was just like, what do I do? And then I just Google, or I was, just thinking like, what do I like to do? But you just never know, like when you share a story, when you listen to somebody's story, like, man, that's good. Like that sounds interesting. I want to know more about it. So yeah, I'm all for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I completely resonate with everything that you just said. I mean, I think that's kind of another reason why I started this podcast too, is to just be able to share people's stories. And because I feel like a lot of people don't have access, right, to the resources or the different types of people and different careers and opportunities to hear their stories. But I'm about to get on my soapbox for a second because it's like, I feel like with younger generations, it's just getting harder, like to talk to people in person, right?
Yeah.
With like technologies and screens and phones. It's just like, even though people are more accessible through technology, I feel like we're talking less and having less conversation. And so everything you just said, I'm like, yes, like preach, girl.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah. And then, I mean, granted, I feel like, because of your interest in journalism and telling people's stories, like there's more of an intrigue for you. But truly, like anybody can ask anybody, the worst. I think for me, the biggest fear is like just people kind of saying no or like not responding to talking to me, right? But I think even for asking, like, for example, the podcast, right? Like finding more guests to come on, there's this fear of rejection on my side. But however, how would you know if you don't ask? And I think for people listening today, if you are a young person listening, like take Ina's advice and don't be afraid to just ask people and listen to their stories. Because I certainly learned a lot from you today, Ina. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Hey guys, if you want to chat with Ina, feel free to reach out to me through DM and I'll be able to connect you. Or you can email me at podcastwigu@gmail.com. Thanks guys. Until next time. Bye.
Bye.